I do things that are kind of cool to other people.
Keep going.
I am a relevant human being amongst probably about 30 people.
It's
I
literally dozens of us.
There's literally dozens of us.
Uh,
I do things with my hands. Check.
cool.
1, 2,
Yeah,
check. Cool.
all right. So yeah, just walk me through it. Walk me back where you started and why you got into this.
Okay, so I started playing music mostly just because I thought it looked really cool to play violin, viola when I was younger. I also really liked dancing from like a young age. So I kind of went hand in hand. And then I was playing in a band. I learned how to play guitar. My dad had a drum set, so I was playing around with that a lot when I was younger. And then just natural progression, I decided to get into recording and start doing my own stuff. And just turned into like a small passion of mine. Something I started doing kind of just like while I was procrastinating. And then what started the Manatee Commune project was me wanting to release some of the stuff that I had been working on while I was living in the dorms at Western. Not really having a name to release anything under, so I just found something that was Googleable and I thought was kind of funny. And so I decided on that name. I came out with like a little EP. It was terrible. It was awful, like any first, EP that you release. And I kind of knew it, but it was like a nice thing to do. And then I learned a lot about that release and like learned a lot about like myself and like what I wanted to do. And I didn't ever really take it too seriously until I was approached by Austin, who's my manager, to like work on something together. And now I'm a part of this like incredible group of people who all like are dedicated to doing the music thing. So that's kind of how it all started.
So you mentioned it seems like you've always been using a lot of different things. Like, is that kind of an indecisive thing, or is that you just like using a lot of instruments?
Oh yeah, totally. I think my inspiration comes from um, I don't know how much you could use this, but I think a lot of my inspiration comes from something that sounds like somebody with like severe ADD made it. Somebody who's just like having a massively hard time like staying focused on like one thing, and the reason why I probably use so many instruments is because I have this idea with music, which is like um, I like. Let's see if I can try to describe it. I really like paintings or like art or anything like that where you can look at it over and over again and see it from a different perspective, and you can see like all these different details that like mean different things. And that's why I like using tons of different instruments and trying to make things as complicated as possible, but still have like some kind of cohesion. Because I feel like it's kind of a big melting pot of things where people can like look into it and see like, wow, there's like all these different elements that like add to each other. Um,
Are you saying that you like art or music that doesn't maybe not have a specific message, just like a conglomeration of things that elicit an emotion? Is that the
Yeah,
notion?
actually, yeah, I really do like music or artwork that more elicits a um, kind of unique feeling amongst a person, like versus something that has like a distinct message or like a distinct feeling about it. It's more of something that changes from person to person. Uh, I also have like a really irrational fear of like cliche things, and I've always felt that way. And I think that's like one of the reasons why I use like so many different instruments is because I don't ever want to be like stuck in a box like with this cliche stuff. It sometimes can be more of a downside than it can be like a benefit, just because I'm kind of like sometimes I get overwhelmed with like the amount of things that I can put into one song. Um, but yeah.
So you're saying it's like you don't want to become the violin guy.
Yeah, exactly. I also don't want to be um, yeah, I definitely don't want to be like that. I mean, I think like every electronic artist has their symbol of like the things that they do. Like, I mean, Shigeto is like obviously a percussionist. Like he has incredible percussion in everything he does. Like I think Chrome Sparks is kind of the same way. You can tell he used to be like a percussionist of sorts, and you can also tell that he's like a enthusiast. Like he has like so many different elements of like all these different synth sounds and that kind of thing, where like you can very much tell the instruments that I have in my room just based on like, I use a lot of guitar, I use a lot of viola, use a lot of like Logic synths and stuff like that. So it's like, I think you're always going to end up being that guy. And like, that's the beauty of like just playing music or doing art in general, is that you're always going to like be yourself for the most part. But yeah, I mean, when somebody listens to like a piece of music that's mine for the first time and goes, wow, I bet this guy like plays violin or something like that. Then I know I'm not being true to myself, because I don't feel like a violist or a guitarist or like a producer or like something like that. I feel like somebody who's just making music and like, using the skills that I've been given, but I would never call myself like one thing in particular. And for that very reason, I think I'll use like as many instruments as I possibly can in every situation.
So you're talking a little bit about your influences then.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going. Like
Yeah.
influences and why? Like what
Yeah.
When you hear a guy that you're a big fan of, it's like, yeah, that's why. I like that.
It changes so much, like anybody, I imagine. But actually that in mind, it stays very the same. I tend to really like music that's like relatively esoteric, something that I think like one person likes for a different reason than why I like it. So like that in mind, like Chrome Sparks is a really good example. Like he almost writes like symphony parts. Like he almost writes like scores of music for people, because it's just so like it's full of so many different like emotions and elements, and people like it for different reasons. I hear people describe what feelings it gives them. Like, they'll be like, it's so bright and happy, and like others will say it's so dark and like, mysterious. But yeah, influences, I mean, like lately I've been like way into funk for some reason, like way more into funk music. Like I've been listening to a lot of like Charles Bradley, which is really funny. And like I was just listening to actually Chrome Sparks Fader mix today, which is why he's on my mind. But like he has a ton of that kind of influence. Like like going way back, like Take On Me by Aha has been like one of my favorite songs of all time. And like that was like the reason why I got into like making electronic music in the first place. And then, like tons of stuff like that, where kind of like this more like shuffly kind of music lately. And like, you can totally hear those elements. And then, and also like hip hop obviously has a huge influence on like every electronic musician these days, just like in producers in general, because that was the reason why people produced in the beginning. So like, I'm always inspired by stuff like that. And like, especially listening to older beats, and like, Bonobo is a super good example. Like the guy has like this amazing tie between like soul and like hip hop, and then like all this amazing sampled music. And like that's what like if that's the dream, is to like to be the kind of person who has like who's able to make these like incredible beats that are like so fluid and sound so natural and are like so hip hoppy and sound like amazing shuffles, and then but then still be able to bring in like a kalimba and like some like messed up piano part, and then like, oh whoa, Little Dragon's voice is in there, like what the heck, like that sort of thing. Yeah, those are definitely like, I think anybody who's doing something using like all these incredible elements that they have at their disposal, but then also taking like all these fresh ideas and kind of like mashing them together and like hoping for the best. Like Subtract is like that for sure. Subtract is like, I mean, everything he does is so is very original, but it's using things that have been kind of done before, but he's just like kind of flipping it on its head a little bit and like making the production a little bit tighter, a little bit different, a little bit more like open. And I don't know, it's cool. It's like the most exciting time to be a musician, to listen to music, since I'd say, yeah, those are some of my influences.
Do you think, what element of like being accessible would you say, like, do you build that into your music, or is this just like straight, this is what's in my head and I'm putting it on?
It's a super good question.
What was the question that I just asked you?
I'll get there one second. I gotta formulate my thought.
Okay, yeah.
I think, oh man, being an accessible musician is it's such a catch because on one hand there are, let's see if I can try to put it this way.
Yeah, you're on time.
Okay.
There's no rush.
I think it's pretty much impossible for me to be not accessible, like, or like not be trying to be accessible, because part of the reason why I make music is to share it with others. And like if I make music and somebody else isn't enjoying it with me, then I have a pretty hard time like even finding a reason to make music. And like so for that very reason, it's going to be, my music is pretty much always going to be like relatively accessible because I really want people to enjoy it alongside. That being said, like it's a fine line to walk, because if you are always making things that are accessible, at least I found, then you're never gonna make music that's from your heart, like almost never, because it'll just be for others. You'll just hear other people's opinions. You'll just make music for your friends. You'll just make music for your family. It won't make any sense. And it's tough because, like, somebody will give you like a nice criticism, something constructive that gives you an idea of like where you want to go. But then you hear that just banging around your head all the time, and you're like, man, I'm, like I should be writing music for them, and it's really like a motivation zapper. So it's definitely a fine line to walk as a musician, being accessible or being like kind of experimental. But like I said, it's a really exciting time to be a musician because everybody sees, blown away by this on like the SoundCloud community. It's like there are always people that are like, that's so smart, like that's so creative, that's so like interesting. And I think for that reason, like a lot of people can just let loose at this point. But I think I've had a lot of friends come to me and be like, how can I make my music like more popular? And that's always a tough one because like people do want to, like a lot of people want to be musicians for a living. I think anybody wants to be an artist for a living. There are a few people that like would say, I don't really want to be, but I'm sure there are tons of people who would be like, I would love to be a chef for a living. I would love to like be an artist of some sort. But the truth is, like, if you want to do something for a living, you have to make it for other people at some point. You have to get to a point where you're like, this is no longer mine, this is others. And so in that situation, I always have to tell people, like, you gotta follow the guidelines of production. Like, you have to keep your snares at like on 1 and 3. You have to make sure that you're using the same elements. You can't be like in some weird time signature that nobody can understand. Like, everything has to be like relatively within bounds. So I don't think it always has to be that way, but if you want your music to be kind of popular, it kind of has to be that way.
So if you're saying, you're essentially saying that working within that framework actually gives you some mobility, right? Like you know, like that's my framework, so now I can play.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that being said, like, I think overthinking it, it's all a balance. Like, it's all this balance of like, I'm gonna let myself go, and I'm gonna do something fresh, and I think a lot of it is just, I mean, like my experience as a musician, my experience as like a professional musician has been less exploring the community and more exploring myself and what I like and like what I want to do, like what I want to make. I think that's really interesting. That's what accessibility is really about, is like choosing personally like what motivates you to be an accessible musician. So,
and then working within those bounds you were just talking about.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think making bounds, yeah, I guess like being a professional musician, you have to make bounds by which to work in, and then you can be as creative as you can possibly be. Yeah. I'm not really sure how to put that eloquently, but
I mean that totally works.
cool.
So you used to talk about the SoundCloud community. You talk about like you think it's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
Um, uh, in what way do you feel like do you fit into that? Do you feel like there's a forward or like positive momentum moving in some direction, and do you feel like you're moving with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, the SoundCloud community is really exciting, and I do feel like I am following within its momentum. I really do feel like I wouldn't be as popular as I am if the SoundCloud community wasn't so um, embracing. It seems like there's always somebody there's never been really a time in like history that I can think of where people are really searching for like very small artists. They're actually like really looking out for those people and like finding them and like soaking in all of that stuff. And I really think I've benefited from it. Do I feel like I'm moving forward with the SoundCloud community? Yes and no. I feel like I'm actually not a part of the general movement of the electronic music scene as I would like to be. I actually think I'm like a little bit behind just by like a little bit. And I think that just has to do with like my knowledge as like a producer, my knowledge as a musician, my knowledge of like the community in general. And and that's been like a part of like going to South by Southwest and like experiencing shows in Seattle and like really kind of gauging the scene. And like I was never into club music until like the last like year and a half, and started to like really start to embrace it and like get excited about like, wow, there's like all these really sweet club tracks, and like understanding like drops and like how they function in like a live setting and stuff like that. And I think like the SoundCloud community is, I guess, like really, man, I don't even know what the right word is. They're so quick to drop something and move on. And I certainly don't feel like I've been dropped. I was never picked up by any means, but I'm not on the right basket to be picked up from, I don't really make flume step. Like I'm not too much on like the Odessa train too much. And like, yeah, and I don't make very hip hoppy beats. So I'm curious like where that's going to lead to, but yeah, I don't think the SoundCloud community I feel like I've been nicely granted some like very sweet things, but like I haven't been embraced in a very like overwhelming way, which I hope will happen someday, maybe.
So let's jump off of that and talk about let's talk about Bellingham and where we are. The last part you were just talking about a desert.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually have come out of Bellingham. Like a ridiculous amount of artists come from Bellingham, either move to Seattle or go on. But what can you talk a little bit about that? Like where are we, and place that for the viewer, right? Like where the viewers are Northwest viewers, but
that's true.
Bellingham? Where's Bellingham?
Yeah. Well, Bellingham in northwestern Washington, like in like the height of the rainforest area, like right next to the Cascade Mountains, like just north of Seattle, just south of Vancouver, right on the water, like amidst like an incredibly blossoming university full of like liberal arts degrees and really young and like excited people. I also think like middle class, like parents that send their kids there with a crap ton of money. The community is like very fresh, very accepting, very adventurous, very friendly, very just excited in general. Like everybody is like, this whole city kind of feels like it's kind of like buzzing a little bit. Like it's just kind of like stoked about some stuff. Here, I'll keep that going. Okay.
May I say that again? The whole community is doing what? Tell me about the community.
Yeah, well, the whole community is just stoked on any kind of artwork that's happening in general. And I mean, it's not like 100% of everybody, obviously, but there's such a tight-knit group of people that are so excited to just go see artwork, go see music, go party in general. So I think everybody's kind of looking, in Bellingham, everybody's kind of looking for like the next best thing to go and do with their spare time. I also think everybody in Bellingham is a little bit bored, like just bored enough that they're not like sitting in their house alone, bored out of their minds, but they're all just bored enough to be able to like go out and try something totally fresh and totally new. It's weird. I mean, in Bellingham, I know more people that like slackline and like boogie board and like climb upside down or like do like weird stuff that like nobody would ever do in any other place. And like it's just people like wanting to try new things and seek out new stuff. And like, I mean, it's to use somebody else's words. I think Austin said this, but Bellingham is kind of like an incubator for anybody who's coming out with anything new. It's just this place where it can like get passed around amongst people and people try new things and they like explore it and they pass it around to another person. And then the next thing you know, it's like everybody's doing it down at like Boulevard Park or something like that. Or like, you know, everybody's going to a show of like their favorite band or whatever. Yeah, and it's a cool place to be an artist. I mean, having two major cities like north and south has made it like so easy to just like pass back and forth like all of these incredible like experiences. And like going down to Seattle and playing shows every weekend, it's a piece of cake. I mean, it's so nice. You drive an hour and a half and like there you are. You get to play a show for like 300 plus people in like these incredible rooms. And yeah, I also think another big part of Bellingham's music scene has been the house show music scene, because people are so willing to go and just drink in like somebody's house and listen to some music. And I don't know any other community in like Washington State, probably in the Northwest, that is like that, where everybody just wants to like get around to somewhere and like hang out and then listen to music and go see a band. And it doesn't matter how good the band is, really. I mean, people are just like willing to listen to it, just like willing to put their like ear to it and like give it a chance. And I think that's really cool.
What's an example of that? I know there's the festival, what's it called?
Yellingham.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Yellingham was the first place I ever played a show as Manatee Commune. And it was after I had released like a little EP thing. It was like a little 7-track EP. And it got passed around amongst some friends. So they were like, hey, you should come play a show. And IG-88 headlined it, which goes to show like house shows like do really, really well for that reason.
What is Yellingham for people who don't know?
Oh, yeah. Yellingham is a collection of like house shows around Bellingham area. So it used to be run by like a few people, and everybody would just kind of like give up their house for like the weekend and they would just get passed around. It was cool. Like they made t-shirts, they were banners, like people got paid, which is really, really cool. And it was always like 5 or 6 houses, and there was like a pretty decent schedule, which was really cool. And I think there was a website for a little while. And the headlining event was always at the Makeshift, which is really cool. So, yeah, Yellingham is super unique. There's no way that would ever happen, like, in any other city that I can think of. I mean, I think a couple of shows got caught and, like, shut down by cops. But, like, other than that, I mean, everybody was having a good time and enjoying themselves. And, yeah. Yeah.
Hold on, we're gonna hold for a second.
Cool.
I'll wait for that to pass. Wonder what that was.
I know, it's a tiny box drum. Cool.
All right, so let's start wrapping up. But to finish about Bellingham, do you work with other artists in Bellingham? Do you feel influenced by other artists? Who would some of those artists be? I mean,
Totally.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I lived in a house just a few months ago that was a house show venue, and I was friends with some artists. So there was Nick Emard, who he was a part of Rubik's Shoes and Dogs and New Lungs, and he also did his own solo project called Reasoner. He was like a huge influence on like me as a musician, because he would hear my stuff and he would like comment on it in the kitchen and stuff like that. So I was always really inspired by like what he was working on, because he's such a fluid musician. Like he can just like do things and like come up with amazing stuff, and he doesn't seem like he ever goes through any kind of like crisis while he's working on something. He just kind of like does it, And I find that like amazing because like most of the stuff that I work on, I have to go through like some kind of existential crisis before I can like finish it. But he just cranked things out. It was nuts. So yeah, definitely like all that stuff. But like other musicians, there's one thing about Bellingham is there really isn't that much of a booming electronic scene. But the people that I was working with, like Cufflinks, a really good example, and like Learning Team when they were all a part of that thing, they were like all together in and they really brought me up as artists because they were just so incredibly nice. Like it was hugs all the time, and like always congratulating me on music and like and they had such an amazing following of like really tight knit group of friends, and they all came to their shows and they all danced and they all sang their songs together. It was nuts. It was like the biggest like campfire hug experience like I've ever had in my life. And then like Palisades. When they were playing, like those shows were nuts. Like I had the sweatiest I've ever been in my life, hands down. And like people just wrecking stuff, but then also like picking up after themselves afterward. Like people are really nice in Bellingham, but that was crazy. I mean, rock stars for sure, like 100%. And then, yeah, and then working with Casey Scalf of Sensibellum, that was one of the big turning points as a musician, just as like a person as well, like understanding what I want to do professionally. And Casey's like a really, really inspiring person to just be around because he's so excited about what he's working on and like motivated, not because like he wants to make money or he wants to like own a huge house or like, I don't know, he wants to like hang out with a bunch of girls or anything like that. He's just like is doing it because he genuinely wants to like spread some joy and like have fun and like do weird things and like do crazy things with people and like come up with new ideas. And I don't know, I love that. I love when people are doing things like for these for everybody, for like the benefit of like a big group and the benefit of like of having a good time with like a bunch of people. And Casey's like the quintessential of that. Like he's really got it figured out. So definitely a really inspiring person. Yeah.
So let's wrap up by talking about your process when you make music.
Yeah.
What are we looking at when you? I mean, how does that even start? Do you just sit down at the computer and go, I'm gonna make music now? You know.
Yeah.
What's the process?
Yeah, my process is for making music is pretty pretty complicated, but also really random. My original process was you always start a song with something new, and like whether it be like a new synth, a new chord progression, a new piece of hardware that I've gotten, or like a new instrument that I bought the other day, or like a new recording technique, anything like that. Just like trying something totally fresh, and that's usually how I think most artists start their stuff. Is they're like, wow, I have an idea, I'm gonna try it, see what happens, and then it kind of moves from there. But you know, it's changed quite a bit over time, and especially playing a lot of shows, I'm starting to realize like the reasons why I make music, and that's certainly changed a lot. So like a lot of my process is now thinking about the end product and like really what I want it to become, and in a way that can actually be like really negative because it ends up kind of clouding the process, but it shows me the end product, which is probably what I don't need to see because the majority of making music is the process, obviously. But yeah, that is my main process. Is I usually start with something totally fresh that I've never done before, and the most amazing thing I think about just being a person is like flow state, or like when you start getting into this place where you're just excited about what you're working on in that moment, and you could keep working on that one song forever because it just feels so good to just keep like pushing forward and like working on that one specific lick or like that one specific like beat or something like that. And that's usually where like my I guess my process kind of gets clouded, because in those moments it's just like whatever seems like the right thing to do in those moments. So I guess like for the last track that I was working on, with like Susie. We did like a remix of a Cook song. And that was really cool. And the process for that one was she came over, we recorded some stuff. We had like a really basic chord progression we were working with. And then I had an idea in my head where like I wanted to play toms in the beginning of the song to like kind of start off with and like do something really big with like the production. And I had that idea in my head, and then it kind of didn't really work out. It didn't like play out right. And I had like all these ideas that just kind of like didn't quite work. And then I let it sit for like a day. Then I came back to it with like a fresh idea and just banged the whole thing out in like just a couple of days. And I think that's mainly the process, is just working on something for a little while, letting it sit, coming back, letting it sit, then coming back, and then just like trying to finish it in like one last run, and then coming back to it one more time. So yeah, but it changes every time. It really does. It's so strange. Creativity is extremely fickle. Maybe for me, maybe for everybody. I have no idea. But yeah, it changes every day for sure.
So let's wrap up with tell me about going from your studio to your live show, and what is what's that process?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Took me a long time to really get comfortable practicing for a live show, because I didn't really understand what people liked to see when it came to electronic music, because I hadn't seen a lot of electronic music at the time. And it started off with trying to do as much live instrumentation as I possibly could, which worked out really well in the beginning. It was really eye-catching. It was very original. I think a lot of people like that in the Bellingham area. But when I started playing shows in Seattle, where people's responses weren't so warm and welcoming because it was such a bigger crowd of people, then I started to realize that I needed to focus more on making something accessible and like easy to digest than to like be impressive with the amount of instruments that I could play. So my process now for going from the studio to a live setting is just having like a really clear idea of how I want the audience to react, and then kind of like writing that down, kind of getting an idea for like each track that I want to go with, and then developing some like really cool transitions that I'm proud of, remixing a lot of the songs that I've done before, and then throwing them into Ableton as much as I can. And then that's usually when, because like I don't use Ableton for any other studio stuff besides the live setting. So once it's in Ableton, like I emotionally like just turn that song into a live thing. Like after it's in Ableton, it's done. Like it's over. Like the only thing that I'm going to be doing with it now is just playing it live. And that emotionally is really good, because then when I do practice it in the studio, it feels like a live setting, and I can kind of close my eyes and like turn up everything as loud as I possibly can, and imagine that I've had 2 beers and like there's 100 something odd people or whatever in front of me, and let myself get into character and like let myself like kind of do that whole thing. It took me a long time to really get comfortable with that, though, to get comfortable with playing live in the studio and like practicing live in the studio, because I always felt kind of dumb, like I was a character that I didn't want to be. But I think now I'm like portraying myself really well live, and I'm proud of that when I practice it. So
do you feel that's a character you kind of have to cultivate? Like
yeah.
Who is that opposed to
yeah.
Daytime Gray opposed to Manatee Commune?
Yeah, I guess yeah, I do have to put on a bit of a character for the Manatee Commune thing. I think I'm a relatively charismatic person, but it takes a lot of energy to be a charismatic enough human being for the stage. Like, but also, I'm naturally very high strung and like pretty nervous, and like which is why I make like really chill music, because it brings me down as well. So what's the coolest part about the Manatee Commune project is when I do get in character, I actually tend to like calm down and like be really accepting that like none of this is a reflection of myself. It's a reflection of the project. And I think in that's a really cool thing about electronic music and just being a musician is you get to have this alter ego as well as your normal person. And the alter ego is like your shield. It's like the thing that like people judge or whatever, but in reality, you're like a totally different human being in the studio. And I think I am a different person. Just, yeah, not quite as chill, not quite as charismatic. And yeah, smoke a lot more weed.
So, how did you? Okay, and finally, how do you differentiate yourself, or how would you say essentially like this is my live show, or this is what I do, and it's a little bit different from other folks. You know, tell me why, or explain to someone who hasn't seen your live show or heard your music before. Kind of, you know, what's the reason they would want to go see it, or why it's different?
Yeah. The live show is is an ongoing process, but I can tell you my idea behind the whole thing is that I want it to be as inclusive as possible, and the live show is, for me personally, is less about me performing for others as much as it is like performing with others kind of thing. I really want to like portray and for people to feel like I'm dancing with them and I'm like experiencing the music with them, and I'm playing a lot of it. I'm triggering all these tracks and like I'm moving around with all these parts, but like the point of it is to like enjoy this like awesome thing, this awesome moment where we're all gathered in one place together and like bring it all together. And I really hope people feel that way. I don't know how true that is, but that's definitely the idea that I want to give. Cool.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome.